This is the Prophecy Project. Understanding the times, the nations in military conflicts, with Bible teacher and author Alan Bonk.
Welcome. This is the 8th video in a new series of prophecy videos. It is now 2022 and things are changing all around us. By that I mean the world, its plagues and governments are going out of control. This is a study of the second book of Esdras, which is also called For Ezra. The videos are divided into individual chapters from the book. Some chapters will be much longer than others. Some have a lot of personal input and questions from Ezra himself. However, most of the chapters are still prophetic in nature. I have given each chapter a simple title from something I found in that chapter. Chapter 8 is Few Shall Be Saved. Ezra, chapter 8, verse 1. And he answered me, saying, The Most High hath made this world for many, but the world to come for few. I will tell thee a similitude, Ezra. As when thou askest the earth, it shall say unto thee, that it giveth much mold, or clay, wherein earthen vessels are made, but little dust that gold cometh of. Even so is the course of this present world. There be many created, but few be saved. The angel presents Ezra with one more indication concerning the relationship of the world, the cosmos, and the men in it, and the number that will be saved from the cosmos, and the number, the multitude, that will be judged guilty. It is the difference between the amount of gold in the dirt and the amount of clay. Few shall be saved. The world to come is the millennial kingdom of the Lord. There has actually been two worlds thus far. The first, the old world created before the flood, it came to a complete end at Noah's flood. Mankind did not end, but the system of man's governments and laws did. This is seen in 2 Peter 2:5. And God spared not the old cosmos, or the old world, but saved Noah, the eighth person, a preacher of righteousness, bringing in the flood upon the world of the ungodly. The second world system came into being when the people, after Noah's flood, Noah's children, began to build the Tower City, the Tower of Babel. To make a name for themselves, this world system is the one in which we live right now. We are told that to be a friend of this world is to make an enemy of God. For this world is opposed to everything God stands for. James 4:4 says, Know ye not that friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. On to verse 4. So I answered and said, Swallow then down, O my soul, understanding, and devour wisdom. For thou hast agreed to give ear, and art willing to prophesy. For thou hast no longer space than only to live. O Lord, if thou suffer not thy servant, that we may pray before thee, and give unto us seed unto our heart, and culture to our understanding, that there may come fruit of it. How shall each man live that is corrupt, who beareth the place of a man? For thou art alone, and we are all one, workmanship of thine hands. Like as thou hast said, for when the body is fashioned now in the mother's womb, and thou givest it members, thy creature is preserved in fire and water, and 9 months doth the workmanship endure, thy creature which is created in her. But that which keepeth and is kept shall both be preserved, And when the time cometh, the womb preserved delivereth up the things that grew in it. For thou hast commanded out of the parts of the body, that is to say, out of the breasts, milk to be given, which is the fruit of the breast, that the thing which is fashioned may be nourished for a time, till thou disposest it to thy mercy. Thou broughtest it up with thy righteousness, and nurture it in thy law, and reformest it with thy judgment, and thou shalt mortify it as thy creature, and quicken it as thy work. If thou shalt destroy him with so much labor was fashioned, it is an easy thing to be ordained by thy commandment, that the thing which was made might be preserved. Now therefore, Lord, I will speak, touching man in general, that thou knowest best, but touching thy people, for whose sake I am sorry, and for thine inheritance, whose cause I mourn, and for Israel, for whom I am heavy, and for Jacob, for whose sake I am troubled. Therefore will I bring to pray before thee for myself and for them, for I see the falls or failures of us that dwell in the land. But I have heard the swiftness of the judge which is to come. Therefore hear my voice and understand my words, and I shall speak before thee. This is the beginning of the words of Ezra before he was taken up. And I said, O Lord, thou that dwellest in everlastingness, which beholdeth from above in things in heaven and in the air, whose throne is inestimable, whose glory may not be comprehended, before whom the hosts of angels stand with trembling, whose service is conversant in wind and fire, whose word is true, and sayings constant, whose commandment is strong, and ordinance fearful, whose look drieth up the depths, and indignation maketh the mountains to melt away, which the truth witnesseth. O hear the prayer of thy servant, and give ear to the petition of thy creature. For while I live, I will speak. For so long as I have understanding, I will answer. O look not upon the sins of thy people, but on them which serve thee in truth. Regard not the wicked inventions of the heathen, but the desire of those that keep thy testimonies in afflictions. Think not upon those who have walked vainly before thee, but remember them, which according to thy will have known thy fear. Let it not be thy will to destroy them which have lived like beasts, but to look upon them that have clearly taught thy law. Take thou no indignation at them which are deemed worse than beasts, but love them always. Put their trust in thy righteousness and glory. For we and our fathers do languish of such diseases. But because of us sinners, thou shalt be called merciful. And if thou hast a desire to have mercy upon us, thou shalt be called merciful to us, namely, that have no works of righteousness. For the just, which have many good works laid up with thee, shall out of their own deeds receive reward. For what is man that thou shouldest take pleasure at him, or what is a corruptible generation that thou shouldest be so bitter towards it? For in truth there is no man among them that be born, but he that dealt wickedly, and among the faithful there is none that hath not done amiss. For in this, O Lord, thy righteousness and thy goodness shall be declared, if thou be merciful unto them which have not the confidence of good works. Ezra extols the virtues of God. In verses 4 through 14, he talks of God's character, mercy, righteousness, understanding, judgment, workmanship, and creativeness in nurturing mankind. the work of his labors. He lifts up God's laws and commandments. Ezra, in verse 6, also wants God to know that he has a real need, Ezra does, to be able to talk to him, to have God's ear, and that God would respond to his prayer. He calls it the seed of our heart. Ezra has extolled the virtues of God so that he could make some points and suggestions to God. First, he acknowledges that God is qualified to know how to handle mankind in general. But when it comes to his people, Israel, he wants to make suggestions. Verse 15, Lord, I will speak. Touching man in general, thou knowest best. But touching thy people, for whose sake I am sorrowful or sorry. I suspect that something has been lost in translation when coming into English. Ezra may not be saying that he knows better than God how to handle or deal with God's people. He may simply be saying that God's people and the people of the world must be handled or should be handled differently. With that said, Ezra goes on to say that he feels that it would be better if God only thinks about the righteous and ignores the wickedness of the world. Verse 26, O look not upon the sins of thy people. Or 27, regard not the wicked inventions of the heathen. Verse 28, think not on those that have walked vainly or disingenuously before thee. 29, let not thy will to destroy them which have lived like beasts. Verse 30, take thou no indignation on them which are deemed worse than beasts. As a prophecy teacher, I deal with all the events of the future, the time of the end, and I have had students ask me, how do we stop this event from happening? What must we do to stop God from executing these judgments? I can only remind them that our blessed hope is this, that the Lord would return and set up his kingdom. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. The kingdom of God and the judgment of sin go hand in hand. We should not hinder the coming of the kingdom with our prayers. We do, however, pray for time to reach as many as we can with the gospel. We desire that God continue to be merciful. We know that God is holy and that mankind, all of us, is corrupt. This world system that we live in cannot participate in the New Jerusalem. The world must be judged. Ezra is not alone when it comes to praying for judgment to be withheld. Abraham prayed for Sodom and Gomorrah when God was going there to assess their spiritual condition. Abraham managed face to face to get the Lord to agree if there was only 10 righteous in the cities, he would not destroy them. Alas, there was not 10. And fire fell. God did spare Lot and his immediate family from the destruction. It required the angels of God to physically remove them. They took them by the hand and led them out to safety. This pattern of deliverance of Lot and his family is used in the New Testament to describe the removal of God's people, his bride, in the last days. It's found in Luke 17:28 through 30. I'll read it. Likewise, also as it was in the days of Lot, they did eat and drank, and they bought, they sold. They planted, they builded. But the same day that Lot went out of Sodom, it rained fire and brimstone from heaven and destroyed them all. Even thus shall it be in the day when the Son of Man is revealed. Verse 37. Then answered he me and said, some things hast thou spoken aright, and according unto thy word it shall be. For indeed I will not think on the disposition of them which have sinned before death, before judgment, before destruction. But I will rejoice over the disposition of the righteous. I will remember also their pilgrimage and their salvation and the reward that they shall have. Like as I have spoken now, so shall it come to pass. Wow. The first thing God says in response to Ezra is, some things that I have spoken are right. God does not expound on what Ezra has wrong, but rather he has gotten what he has gotten right. He wants to lift him up. God will focus on the righteous and the wonderful future they will have. He says, but I will rejoice over the disposition of the righteous. He will watch their pilgrimage, their salvation, deliverance, and the rewards they will receive. He finishes with the statement, like I have spoken now, so shall it come to pass. We can count on it. Verse 41. For as the husbandman soweth much seed upon the ground, and planteth many trees, and yet the thing that is sown good in his season cometh not up, neither doth all that is planted take root. Even so is it of them that are sown in this world. They shall not all be saved. This is a simple truth that God wants us to know. Not everyone shall be saved, even though we reach out to many, even though we reach out to as many as we can. Ezra will pick up and will make request of God in verse 42. I, Ezra, answered them and said, if I have found grace, let me speak. Like as the husbandman's seed perisheth, if it come not up, and receive not thy rain in due season, or if there come too much rain, and corrupt it, even so perisheth man also, which is formed with thy hands, and is called thine own image, because thou art like unto him, for whose sake thou hast made all things, and likened him unto the husbandman's seed. Be not wroth with us, but spare thy people, and have mercy upon thine own inheritance, for thou art merciful unto thy creature. Ezra reminds God that he made mankind in his image, and to be merciful to us for that sake. Be not wroth, he says. Now, verse 46. Then answered he me and said, things present are for present, and things to come for such as be to come. For thou comest far short, that thou shouldest be able to love thy creature more than I. But I have oft times drawn nigh unto thee, Ezra, and unto my creature, but never to the unrighteous. In this thou art marvelous before the Most High, in that thou hast humbled thyself as it becometh thee, and hast not judged thyself worthy to be much glorified among the righteous. For many great miseries shall be done to them in the latter times that dwell in the world, because they have walked in great pride. Ezra is reminded that he cannot love God's people as much as God does. Ezra is not able to love at God's level. God also clearly distinguishes between his attitude of the righteous and of the unrighteous. To the righteous, like Ezra, he can draw nigh or near to them, but to the prideful he will never draw close. Ezra is commended by God for his lack of pride and his humility. It is important for every saint, all of us, to remain humble and to, as he said, not judge thyself worthy. Verse 51. But understand thou for thyself, and seek out the glory for such as be like thee. For unto you is paradise opened. The tree of life is planted. The time to come is prepared. Plenteousness is made ready. A city is builded, and rest is allowed, yea, perfect goodness and wisdom. The root of evil is sealed up from you, weakness, and the moth is hid from you. The corruption is fled into hell to be forgotten. Sorrows are past, and in the time is showed the treasure of immortality. And therefore ask thou no more questions concerning the multitude of them that perish, for when they have taken liberty, they despised the Most High, thought scorn of his law, and forsook his ways. Moreover, they have trodden down his righteousness, and said in their hearts, there is no God. Yea, that knoweth, they must die. That knowing, they must die. For as the things aforesaid shall receive you, so thirst and pain are prepared for them. For it was not his will that men should come to naught, but they which be created have defiled the name of him that made them, and were unthankful unto him which had prepared life for them. And therefore is my judgment now at hand. These things have I not shown unto all men, but unto thee, and a few like thee. Then answered I and said, Behold, O Lord, now thou hast showed me the multitude of the wonders, which thou shalt begin to do in the last times. But at what time thou hast not showed me. God is very kind to Ezra, and very blunt concerning the righteous and the ungodly. Ezra is told that God has prepared a wonderful future, even an eternity for him. Paradise is opened for Ezra and others like him, like-minded. He should seek them out. The tree of life is planted, and a city builded for the city of his people, a place full of goodness and wisdom. The root of evil is sealed up from you. The root of man's sin will not be allowed to be in that home. And the moth is hid from you. Corruption of the old nature man will have no place there. The corruption will only have its place in hell, Sheol, the place of the dead. Sorrows are passed away forever, and the saved will have the treasure of immortality, or the gift of eternal life. But the righteous are not given the blessings. Unrighteous are not given the blessings. But God does not leave the unrighteous undefined. He explains why they are in so much trouble. We recognize these descriptions of the unrighteous because they're found throughout the New Testament, in books such as Romans and the epistles. Verse 56 said, For when they had taken liberty, they despised the Most High, but scorned his law, and forsook his ways, have trodden down his righteousness, in verse 57. 58, they said in their heart, there's no God. Verse 60, they which be have defiled the name of him that made them. Verse 60 continued, unthankful unto him which prepared life for them. Romans 1:8, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who hold the truth in unrighteousness, because that when they which may be known of God is manifest in them, for God hath showed it unto them. For the invisible things of him from the creation of the world are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. Because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations, and their foolish heart was darkened. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like unto corruptible man. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, he gave them over to a reprobate mind, not knowing the judgment of God, that they which commit such things are worthy of death. Now we know why. Verse 56 tells us that the unrighteous abused their liberty. When God created man, he gave us the ability to choose. He gave us a will. We are all at liberty to choose our friends, our homes, our clothes, even our thoughts. When people lose their liberties, they are oppressed. This oppression can come from governments, religions, and even families. People can be oppressed by the sins of their fathers. The men of Ezra's day chose to scorn and despise God. They defiled God's name. Their choices are their own. God never forces man to choose or serve him. But when they deny his very existence and Godhead, you've stepped over a line. And the fallen nature of man causes a downward spiral to corruption and death. The opposite is true, of course, of the gospel of Christ. When a man chooses to heed God's truth, oppression abates. Liberty enlightens the heart of our spirit. In 1 Corinthians 3:17 it says, "Now the Lord is that Spirit. And where the Spirit of the Lord is, there's liberty." But we all, with open face, beholding in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as the Spirit of the Lord. Wow. We have seen in verse 52 that paradise is open to those who have chosen God's way, glory to glory. This is the end now of chapter 8. You can go to the next video in the series and continue to chapter 9 or any other chapter you wish to view. Thank you.
This was only one session of many. Be sure to continue watching the Prophecy Project series. If you would like to read more information on this subject, you can find Alan's books on Amazon.com.